Welcome to the ExecMBA podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'd like to share my recent conversation with Steve Miller and Philip Hunter. Steve and Philip are two second-year students in our Executive MBA class of 2026, and I recently connected to talk with them about their decision to pursue an MBA, what led them to Darden, as well as a club they've been involved with during their time here in the Executive MBA program, the Darden Executive Fund. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. And as always, if this conversation is helpful for you, please like this episode and subscribe to the ExecMBA podcast so you never miss an update. And remember, you can always check the episode description for links to Darden blogs, social channels, and more. And now, without further ado, here's my conversation with Steve Miller and Phil Hunter. Steve, Philip, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Great to have you. Steve, how's everything? How are you doing?
Everything is amazing. I was just talking with Phil about, how we can't believe the program is almost over. It seems like it started just yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, y'all are last semester, Q9 at the 10-quarter program. You've got LR2 eventually on the horizon coming up in April. I mean, on the downhill side to be sure. Phil, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Same thing. Steve, just kind of putting all the ducks in a row for what I'm going to do come May and graduate and then kind of going for everything I hope to have achieved from the program.
That's awesome. Well, thank you both for taking some time out for the podcast and for coming on today. We're going to talk about the Darden Executive Fund eventually, but before we get there, I want to spend some more time talking about you and your background. So what got you to Darden, that sort of thing. So Phil, tell us a little bit more about you. Who are you and what's your background?
Sure. So name's Philip, obviously. I actually graduated from UVA in 2020 and then came to the MBA program as a wealth manager. I manage about 45 different clients, and my entire role is just portfolio allocation, making sure they have their long-term needs sorted out, and ensuring that when they're ready for retirement, we can get them the kind of liquidity they need to retire.
And how did you decide that you wanted to pursue an MBA?
So I think the natural progression of that was my background was actually in data science. And then I got brought on by Burkholder Associates, which is the RIA I work for, just to kind of do some early portfolio work for them. So I wasn't in finance at that time. They liked the work I did, so he brought me on full time. And then I just really enjoyed the investment work. So I started looking into more education in finance. But what made me pivot towards the MBA was I found that so much of what my job was behavioral. It was very much working with people, working with the individual decisions they would have to make about the portfolio that weren't necessarily mathematical or finance related questions. And so I chose the MBA because it had a much more interesting focus on how to do that decision making when it's people involved.
Steve, how about you? Tell us a little bit more about you and your background.
Yeah, so Steve Miller, thank you for having me on the podcast. I work with Phil closely in the Executive Fund. I came to Darden after operating a government defense contracting business for almost 20 years. So we grew that company to about 80 million in revenue annual and 1,300 employees. And throughout that process, many errors, as well as many wins, but just eventually got the idea that maybe there were some gaps and I could be a better executive. So I started looking for a program that could help.
And so that's where the MBA kind of hit your radar?
Yeah, I actually sat down at the computer and Googled, can I get into Harvard? And and I found Darden in the backyard. And I looked into the program and I was just really impressed. I thought it was really incredible and an incredible opportunity that I wanted to take advantage of.
What is it about the Executive MBA program in particular, Steve, that appealed to you?
For me, I think it was the chance to be in more of a peer group that was later in their career and had particular questions that were a little bit more seasoned, maybe people who know the ropes in one area, but have gaps in another. Like I definitely felt that way, especially in accounting, which is really kind of a fundamental area if you're running and operating a business. I felt like I didn't have as much control there as I needed to. and I felt that there would probably be people to learn from in the program, in the cohort as much as the faculty.
Phil, I'm curious, what about the executive MBA program in particular appealed to you?
Yeah, I mean, kind of echo what Steve said. I thought it was a great opportunity to get to learn from people who are already sort of mid-career. Again, as a non-traditional student, I had about 10 years work experience before going back to get my undergraduate. And the sort of life experience gap between me and much of my cohort during my undergrad really made it sort of difficult for us to kind of communicate on the same level, which is something that the MBA brought in spades. I mean, I've met people who have had all types of similar situations as well as brand new ones. And it's just great to learn from people who have been there and actually experienced the very issues we're studying in class.
So Steve, I'm curious, you come to Darden, you've been obviously working for a while, up to run a company. You're back in school, though. What's that adjustment like to being a new executive MBA student, if you can remember way back when?
Oh man, whiplash. I swear. I hadn't been in a true academic environment for quite some time. And I think, another thing that helped me ease back into that is that the case method really kind of feels a little bit more live. It's a good simulation of maybe a board environment in some ways, or a team, executive team or project team environment. It's more oriented around live problem solving and talking through something. So that definitely helped me ease back into that environment. I think if I had to sit in a lecture hall for 1, 2, 3 hours at a time, I would just be thinking about work. So being able to, participate in a different kind of academic environment made it a lot easier.
Philip, same question for you. You come to Darden, you're trying to balance work and life and school. What was that adjustment like?
I mean, even having spent so much time prior doing a job while managing my education, it was still very eye-opening experience just how much the workload was going to catch up with me. It's why I ended up learning very early on to lean on my learning team and so to work with other people in the cohort and make sure we got a real brain trust going on when it came to the case study method.
So I want to talk a little bit about how you both decided to get involved with the Darden Executive Fund. So there's 10 or so official student organizations available to our professional degree students. Steve, there's lots of things competing for working professional students' time. Not everybody's going to be involved in the club or organization, although many students choose to be involved. What led you to say, hey, I want to be involved with the Darden Executive Fund?
You know, Great question. I feel like what led me to be involved in the Darden Executive Fund is not only the desire to get a little bit deeper into that finance lane, but also the fact that there are just so many really good clubs that you can participate in. And I was looking at all of them, and I'm like, I really want to join with my peers over here and learn more about this, that, and the other thing. And I just had to force myself to pick one and commit to one really big thing. And I said, the executive fund is a significant opportunity. It's very academic. And if I had to do only one of these, this would be the one.
Is it because of that academic piece that it really appealed?
I'm not going to lie, that has a big benefit profile as well. By participating in the executive fund, you actually get course credit. So it's a bit of a compounding benefit there for your time.
Well, if you mentioned your backgrounds in finance and investments, these kinds of things, what led you to say, hey, I want to be involved with the Darden Executive Fund?
Well, it actually began when Steve and Clayton, who's the COO of the club now, both reached out to me and they mentioned the club to me and said they had these really interesting ideas of what they wanted to do to kind of drive the deaf fund forward. Uh, it is newer compared to like our on Charlottesville clubs, so it was a lot of opportunity to take this small portion of the endowment and really grow it into a kind of respectable investment club. And I found that very appealing. And I think, with Steve's help, we've managed to set up future cohorts to really kind of carry on the investment opportunity here and get a real experience on what institutional investing is like.
Yeah, the full-time MBA equivalent is Darden Capital Management, we've talked about it on the Experience Darden podcast before. It's always fun to highlight the Darden Executive Fund because you're right, it is newer by comparison. Mm-hmm. It's I can remember when it was started, and I've been here for about 10 years or so. I can't say the same for Darden Capital Management. So, Steve, what does it look like? What does the Darden Executive Fund do? Kind of activities, engagements, et cetera.
It's a very serious club, right? So the club is a class, and it also has a class that you're required to take along with it. So there's kind of a double class requirement, and there's a lot of outside of class time commitment. One thing we've done with the club itself is restructure the club and the leadership into 3 distinct strategies for investment. So, as Philip said, what the club does is we take a grant from the endowment, and we invest it into securities in the S&P 900. And we've broken those into 3 distinct strategies that represent various segments of the market. So each individual strategy manages their own, portfolio within the singular fund that is the Darden Executive Fund. And we use this as a method and vector for learning about the market, learning how to interact with the market, and learning how to conduct fund operations and activities, as Philip said.
Philip, what's your role relative to the fund? What are you doing with the group?
Yeah, so I was brought on to be the chief investment officer, and again, alongside Steve, we sort of redesigned these portfolios within the entire fund. But mainly, my role is to work with the individual members of the fund on how to do pitches, how it is we want to analyze these securities, and also how to take out these individual companies and put them in a broader portfolio. Because it's not just how well you think any individual company is doing versus their current stock price, but also how well you think they would fit in a portfolio to get that additional risk-adjusted performance. So just kind of being there, being a sounding board for people when they're developing their pitches, and then working with them on how much money we want to allocate, when it is we need to rotate capital out of particular holdings that we have, and then just overall what kind of market dynamic we're currently in to guide the strategy for each of the individual portfolios.
Yeah, interesting time to be investing. Stock market is at an all-time high. Everything's probably a little bit expensive. Steve, how do y'all figure out? And question for both of you, I guess. How do you figure out what you want to invest in? Do individual members make pitches? How does that work?
Yeah, so one of the classes that's required that I mentioned for participation in the executive fund is the security analysis and valuation class, which is currently being led by our club's faculty sponsor, Rodney Sullivan, who's the executive director of the Mayo Center. So that class helps you build greater understanding for how to analyze a security and how to conduct evaluation of that using various methods. We've definitely leaned on that class and some other members' experience, such as Phil, who has brought great rigor to the investment process and analytical process itself. But to answer your question a little bit more directly, I guess there's a regimented process that we execute to analyze these securities, and we have layered additional strategies on top of that are new. And we continue to monitor how those strategies are impacting the portfolio as a whole and drive that towards a greater goal, which is, of course, generating alpha.
Phil, how much money do y'all have under management at this point?
So currently the deficit's on about 260,000 that is actively allocated. And then, like I said, we're fully allocated at this point, less than 2% in cash. So pretty much all new stock pitches have to come off the heels of a sell pitch as well. So making sure the capital is effectively being reallocated is a big part of what these pitches are about.
That's interesting. How are things going, Steve, with the fund? Do you feel like things are going well?
Well, I think they're going extremely well. You mentioned, the market volatility. That's certainly been a huge topic. One thing that we have really done very intentionally with the fund, and through the help of the security analysis and valuation class and kind of methodology and approach to the fund is really look for these deep value propositions and take a deep look at the portfolio. I think kind of prior to us coming on, there was a little less rigor in terms of how securities were selected and analyzed. Not to say that they were bad selections by any means, but when we brought a little bit more structure to the club, since it was new, that started to bring a little bit more definition towards what we wanted to achieve. So that structure itself, I think, Phil, would you say it's fair to say that that structure has enabled us to make bets, if you will, for lack of a better term, that benefit the fund as a whole, looking for that deep value where that wasn't necessarily being targeted before?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely fair to say. And again, I think one of the biggest behavioral changes we've tried to institute in the club is getting people to kind of get out of that short-term lens. The fund is a long-only fund, and we do have about a 3-year holding period. So we really want to be looking for companies that, regardless of what's happening today in the current market volatility, companies that we can answer the question of why does the market think what it thinks about it, and why is the market wrong? Those are like the two big questions that we want to answer, so that way you can find the deep value positions, and you're not constantly buying and then selling and doing this short-term churn and giving up the kind of alpha you're trying to get on a long-only fund.
Super interesting. How do the two of you feel like this has added to your Darden experience, Steve? I'm curious. This is a little bit different from what you were doing before, but maybe something you were always interested in. How has this added to your Darden experience?
It's it's hard to think of a way that it hasn't added to my Darden experience. I think that for me, the executive fund has been one of the most important parts of the program for about 100 different reasons. Um, not only has it given me greater exposure to some very serious and well disciplined financial management and investment topics, it also allows me to continuously engage with that, right? So some of the courses, they fly by very quickly. And I at least have sometimes struggled to have enough takeaway, before the next class starts. The executive fund has been very continuous, right? So it's a strong constant, and it gives a great baseline for having continual conversations around these topics. Additionally, it's just a great group of very invested people. Uh, no pun intended. The group, they're serious about learning and engaging with what we're doing with the executive fund. So it definitely it's a really high quality team environment. It feels like one team uh, moving forward towards one goal. And then additionally, it's been a great opportunity to lead. And that's not, only for Phil and I. One of the things that we did with the club was we restructured it to allow for greater leadership involvement, right? So breaking the club into 3 separate strategies has allowed us to decentralize some of the leadership structure of the program or fund and provide for 3 separate strategy VPs. So we now actually have 6 individualized leaders within the executive fund, whereas before there were only 2 or 3 real ones.
How many team members, or how many club members do you have that are part of this kind of active team?
Yeah, right now we have 15. Actually, I think we're down 1, right? So down to 14. But the club can hold up to 18. Uh, that that number is in constant kind of discussion with the faculty sponsor. I think 18 is the hard cap for now.
Bill, I'm curious, how has this experience added to your Darden experience? So being involved with the Darden Executive Fund.
Yeah. So like I said, I mean, my job is in investing. So one of the things we often tell our clients and just people in general, investing is one of those careers. It's a pretty 24/7 role. And so actively being involved in it every day is the only real way to kind of keep tabs on what's going on because it changes so fast. So a nice aspect about the DEF is that, it is a course credit, but it's not just something you do in one semester. I mean, we've been a part of this for a full year now. Since starting Darden, we have another 4 months to go with it. So you do get the chance to really stay involved and maintain that involvement throughout your entire experience. For me, getting other people involved and being able to have these conversations not only help me because then people become sounding boards that you can kind of debate what's going on in macro trends, what's going on in the market, and really get some different insights. But it also gives me a chance to kind of further refine my own knowledge set as I'm helping people out with their pitches and with their stocks. Whereas much of my job just involves doing the analysis myself, it's a completely different experience from kind of taking on a more leadership role and helping other people do the analysis. And you start to learn things about yourself and maybe even your own biases and the own proclivities that you have when you're helping someone else do something. And so that's probably been the biggest takeaway I've had from the program with DEF.
So, Steve, what's next for the Darden Executive Fund? What are y'all looking forward to in the months ahead? Obviously, it sounds like you've got a lot on the investment front, but
Yeah, well, I just got a message earlier today from Rodney that we have to brief the board of trustees as to how it's going. So that's fast approaching. We'll all have the opportunity to inform those managing the endowment how we've done, which is also part of the experience, right? So we'll have to put together a full report of how the executive fund has performed and what's next on the horizon. What's next is, we'll continue to complete the required pitches for each strategy and member. Beyond that, I'm looking forward to remaining engaged with the fund as an alumni. So one of the things that we experienced when we came in was the transfer, the handover was very quick. And we had to build a little bit of the plane as we were flying it. And, we, of course, wanted to come up with some new stuff. So we took advantage of that condition set and said, hey, we're going to put some new structure in place. We want to make sure that the incoming class has a firm handoff, everything they need to succeed, and reach back, right? So that's kind of what I see on the horizon for the executive fund.
I appreciate all those notes. I will say club organization transition is more complicated with working professional students than, say, with their residential counterparts. I think a lot of that just has to do with everything people have going on, and this is just one more thing. And so, the level of we always tell prospective students this, but this is, I think, generally true. Maybe y'all feel this is like the level of activity within a particular club or organization can really vary from year to year, depending upon leadership, how much time they feel like they have, kind of plan and coordinate things, how much time and attention they can devote to the particular organization. Sometimes the clubs are really busy, and then sometimes they're less busy. But nevertheless, I think at a minimum, serve as like a community way to make connections with similarly interested or inclined students. Darden Executive Fund's a little bit different because of the academic piece that y'all highlighted here. I want to close by asking you some questions about your Darden experience since you're so close to the end. And Phil, I want to come to you first for this. I mean, obviously, you sit here, well into your second year of the Executive MBA program. For you, what has been the impact of your time at Darden as you think about it?
Yeah. I mean, again, 18 months in, there's been a lot of impact. I think the biggest thing has just been developing those relations with the cohort, going all the way back to LR1, meeting my learning team for the first time, struggling through those first quarter, second quarter to really kind of get into the swing of it. And then watching how that group of 5 or 6 people really expanded to 12, 15, 30. And then all of us just kind of leaning on each other throughout all of our experience, helping guide some people getting new jobs because of their experience and knowledge of other people in the cohort. I think that's been the biggest impact on me is just how much networking is built into it, how much I've learned from everyone else in different fields and how that has translated into me being better at my role, given this sort of general aspect I have to needing to know everything about every kind of sector and every kind of company that's out there.
Yeah, a good way to learn about a lot of those things is just talk to your executive MBA classmates. Typical executive MBA class have over 100 unique employers. It's out of a class of about 120 to 130 students, about 100 unique employers, and typically 20 to 25 industries. So a lot of exposure. Steve, how about for you? What's been the impact of your time at Darden?
I think the impact has been massive, quite frankly. So, especially for anybody who owns or operates a business that doesn't have a little bit more of a formal background or a bit of breadth. Every single class was value add. Every class session was value add. I was able to take it right back to work the next day. Not only that, but different contexts from different businesses and different markets has been very eye opening. Right. So, not just the immediate applicability of virtually every topic and concept, but also the expansion, the broadening, the opening of my aperture for, additional context and considering what's possible, not just now, but in the future for me, for our enterprise, and for future ventures, has been just very, very impactful. Hard for me to overstate how impactful I feel it's been.
Steve, I'll stay with you for this next question. Obviously, you talked a lot about the class that's attached to the Darden Executive Fund. Is there another class or something you've done during your time at Darden that really stands out as like a signature experience or something you think you'll always think about?
Without giving the very easy answer of the executive fund, right? Which is the real answer to that question. I would say that really it's been the alumni, right? So Darden is very good about encouraging class to class, cohort to cohort involvement and engaging past alumni, especially for some of the career events. So bringing in those alumni and having conversations with them and reaching out to people I haven't even met on LinkedIn has been very impactful. I want to add something to this as well. The experiential learning course was very eye opening as well, in all parts, but especially the opportunity to have an executive coach. Never experienced that before. I was not aware that that was going to be a part of the program. And quite frankly, I didn't want to do it when they said you have to do this. You have to have 6 sessions with an executive coach. And after my first session with Gwen Romans, it was very clear that that was something that I could benefit from greatly. So I'm very thankful for that experience. That was huge.
Can you tell folks what the experiential learning course is? A little bit more detail about that. I mean, we talked about it here on the podcast. We had Laura Bordoni on not so long ago, but I think just fun to hear the students' perspective on it.
Yeah, the experiential learning course is intended to walk you through a series of exercises, engagements, events, and deep thought that help you engage a little bit more deeply with your career journey, where you are at in the process, and how it relates to the program. And it's a dedicated time set aside as a class that you get credit for to really examine yourself.
And it's 6 credits in the Executive MBA program. It kind of follows up some work you began doing in between the fall and spring semester in a course called the Professional Advancement course. But it's broken into a series of 1.5 credit classes. The first couple kind of towards the end of your first year, and the next couple kind of at the beginning of your second year. Career, professional development, executive coaching can be a part of it too. I'm curious, Steve, something you said, like you really didn't think you needed it. The executive coaching, were you kind of resistant to it, and then you obviously found it immediately beneficial. What was helpful to you about executive coaching?
To put it more politely than I guess I would otherwise, really having somebody challenge me and my own kind of perceptions and assumptions, right? Especially somebody with a lot of gravitas and experience, who's seen it all before, right? So very transformative experience for me.
And Gwen is a executive MBA alum, I believe, too. So which is pretty cool. So, Phil, can I come to you with the same question? Is there a class or an experience other than the Darden Executive Fund that really stands out to you as something that you'll think about, a few years down the road, when you reflect on your executive MBA experience?
Yeah. And again, to sort of echo what Steve was saying about the experiential learning program, I took a lot from the executive and residence part of that, which is where we got to go and have one-on-one meetings and group meetings with different Darden alum that are actually in these sort of leadership positions, CFO positions that we aspire to, and just to ask them questions about their day-to-day life. I also found the kind of built-in introspection with the experiential learning to be very valuable because it kind of goes beyond just academics and career focus, but really asking you to think about how you're managing your time. Are you staying up on your health? How are you managing your relationships with your family? Giving you sort of a built-in way to manage what seems like the inexhaustible workload of trying to work and go to school full time. So I agree completely. I think the experiential learning program is probably one of the best 4 quarters I had. I also had the opportunity this last J term to take the behavioral decision making class, which, takes into account a lot of the same material that we talk about in sort of the decision analysis courses that are part of core, but comes at it from a very behavioral aspect where we're now taking into consideration how individuals are making these decisions. And it goes beyond just sort of the mathematical formulas and the way the spreadsheets are modeling it to really get at that sort of general manager experience, taking into account how it is people are going to react to different risk tolerances, how people are going to react to these individual biases they might have. I find those sort of behavioral classes to be incredibly impactful because it allows you to go beyond just the math of it and really take on a leadership role to figure out, how do I manage a team? How do I manage my clients from a human perspective?
I appreciate the focus both of you have shared on kind of interacting with others, the team aspect to it, the personal work you've done over the course of the program. You mentioned, both of you have highlighted that from the experiential learning course. Um, I'm curious about your global residency experiences as well. Steve, where'd you go on your global residency?
Funny enough, my one global residency was with Phil. I don't know if you did another one, but we went to Germany during that trip, and that was a great time.
What did you enjoy about it?
I lived in Germany when I was very young, so just kind of being back in the country was a great experience. But in general, I think that the program team and instructor of the class did a great job of curating a variety of experiences that both exposed us to the culture and history of the country, as well as businesses that were not in any one category, right? So we got a lot of exposure very quickly to some exciting things that are going on in Germany. And I just really enjoyed it. And then, at the end of the day, there was one or two pros and some bratwurst.
Bill, did you go anywhere else other than Germany, or was Germany your one global residency?
No, Germany was my one. I had hoped to go to the Finland Estonia one, but it fell on my anniversary weekend with my wife, so I had to prioritize my relationship in that regard. But I think to kind of echo something that Steve was saying, the trip had such a great opportunity to experience again the live action aspect of being in the business world, not just the classroom, but actually talking with founders, talking with CEOs, talking with VPs about how they're actually making their day-to-day lives run and what it is they're doing in their businesses and how they're expanding. If you're going through any sort of turmoil, which during our trip, it was a very volatile time with tariffs between our two countries. So getting to hear the German perspective on everything that was happening at home was very interesting. And then, to kind of echo another sentiment I've had throughout this, it was another built-in opportunity to get to know my cohort better. I met more people that I'd only met occasionally through passing throughout the program and got to have deeper relationships with them. And it was just a continued expansion of that network.
Yeah, nothing quite like traveling with your classmates for a week outside the United States. And obviously, time zone difference. You're a little bit disconnected from what's going on back home. Maybe navigating some cultural and language difference. I'm getting to go in March with a group of students to Ireland, which I'm pretty excited about. So, yeah, they needed a staff member to help support that trip. It's a real hardship. I'm going to see if I can do my best.
I'm sorry you
Um,
have to deal with that, Brad.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Last time I went on one of these, I went to Brazil, but it feels like in a very different world. I'll tell you the date. It was November of 2019. So that was the last global residency I went on. And we had this very different moment in the executive MBA program. There were only four global locations at that time for the global residencies. And we actually traveled with a really large number of people. We had 65 people on this global residency, much larger than it is now, where you travel with about 25 or 30. That's the optimal number. So, y'all had a very unified experience, everybody going to the same companies, seeing the same things. When you're that large, people can't all go to the same things. You have to break off, and then you get to hear, well, this person saw different stuff, and what was it like? And then somebody would say, well, I wish I could have gone to that company, but I had to choose. And so one of the many reasons why we made the change, but also wanted to give students more choice. We have 8, 9 typical global residency locations that are offered for a given class and span all major continents. Mentioned a couple places in Europe, but Argentina, Brazil. We also had Morocco, South Africa recently, India, Southeast Asia, Vietnam has been on the list. Australia, we've had South Korea recently, so lots of great places you can go. But to be clear about what Philip shared, these are not trips or vacations. These are courses where you are going very full days, but plenty of time in the evening also to get into some things. Maybe to Steve's point. All right. Well, last question for you, Steve. What's a piece of advice you would share with our prospective student listeners who are listening to this episode and kind of thinking about their own MBA journeys?
I feel like everybody on these podcasts always says something like, it's a marathon, not a sprint, pace yourselves. And I guess for me, it would be a different version of maybe the same thing, or maybe it's a different thing entirely. But um, you know, enjoy the experience, right? I put a lot of pressure on myself in the beginning of the program to perform, perform, perform. And the more I relaxed and enjoyed the experience, the more I learned and the more opportunities for learning I got, I feel like. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, learning orientation, I think, is something we really stress with prospective students. The grades are fine, but if you focus on the input, what you're learning, the sort of process, I think the rest of it kind of takes care of itself, interestingly enough. All right, Phil, the last word here. What's something you would encourage our prospective student listeners to think about as they think about their own MBA journeys?
Yeah, for sure. Again, I think, I've said it a couple of times, but continue to lean on your cohort with your classmates. You'll be assigned a learning team early on. Those will kind of be your first embeddedness, but it will naturally grow. I'm probably a part of 5 or 6 different learning teams now. You're just going to get to know people from all kinds of backgrounds, and everyone's going to have different insights. And one of the things I think you'll learn pretty quickly is as you're going through the case material, as you're approaching the different problem sets that you've been given, is not just you. If you don't understand what's going on, do as much preparation as you can, but don't feel bad. Like, the whole point of the program is a learning experience. And as you're working along with the rest of your classmates, you're going to see there's a lot of questions, and some of these cases don't have very obvious answers or even singular solutions. So put your work in, work with your team, but don't be afraid to come to class and ask questions, because that's the whole purpose of the case method, to really get down to these harder problem sets that don't have obvious solutions.
Well, Steve, Phil, thank you so much for your time today. It was great catching up with you, and so excited for you and your classmates. Graduation will be here before you know it. Hard to feel that way with it being like 20 degrees outside and so cold, but May is on the horizon.
Well, thank you, Brad. Thank you for taking the time, and really enjoyed this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
And that was my conversation with Steve Miller and Philip Hunter, 2 second-year students in our Executive MBA class of 2026. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at that's EXEC, MBA at Darden.Virginia.edu. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.